Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Greg. I'm a photographer from the UK, and if you're not new here, then thank you so much for tuning into yet another video. So a little while back, I posted a video about my photography right now, how I feel about it, and what I'm really going to focus on to try and improve it going forward. So today, I've collated a bunch of examples of stuff that I've picked up on over the last few years that I think if you consider them and try and think about a lot more when you're out with your camera, can really lead to much more conscious and thoughtful photography. So I've got 4 talking points for you in this video. They all come under the umbrella essentially of composition framing and the feeling you want to portray when you're taking an image, but I've broken them down into 4 subcategories, should we say. And let's get into the first one, which is cutoff points in photography. So cutoff points is my little term or phrase for basically the edge of the frame and where you choose to cut off your photo. So on this first image here, it's quite close, it's tight, it's a bit of a detail-y shot. And there's 2 things that I want to talk about here. So one, on the right-hand side, you'll notice I've cut off the shot just after the wing mirror, okay? So the back wheel of the car's not coming into play, but we've also got that tiny bit of space after the wing mirror, which I think helps just make it feel really intentional on that side of the frame. On the upper left-hand side of the frame, we've got some big trees in the background, which from where I'm stood there with the tight angle, it's impossible to get the top of those trees in the frame anyway, of course, unless I'm shooting at 8mm from where I'm stood. So right there in that instance, I don't care about the trees going off the frame. I don't think it makes that big of a difference, but I do care about where the car starts and finishes. And this would be the case for anything that would be on the edges of the frame. However, when we step back and we take a wider version of the scene, so I've obviously walked further back here, I'm using a wider focal length as well. So when we're wider, we've got way more of those trees in now, we've got the whole car in now. I feel now we're so close to the top of those trees that it's really, really beneficial to have a gap there above the trees. If we're just slightly cutting into the top of those trees, I feel it looks a little bit rushed and not as conscious and thoughtful, like I say. So I've got another example here where in the distance we've got this, is that a cell phone tower? I'm not really sure what that is, but that metal tower in the background there. Because we've got a really wide shot here, it makes sense to me at least to have that gap above it. It may not be loads, but I think it makes the image way more thoughtful just to have that gap there, not have it too close to the top. And then one more example for this would be these 2 shots here of this ruined building. One's a little bit tighter and one's a little bit wider. And in both instances, I've got some negative space above those chimney pots there. They're not coming off the frame. They're not too close to the top of the frame. They've just got a nice little bit of that sky space there. But the main thing about these 2 images that I wanted to point out is the left-hand side of the image. You'll notice on both of them, the tighter crop and the wider crop, I've cut the image off just before a new set of windows or door starts. So you're just getting that brickwork on the left of the frame, which again, I feel at least, makes the images just feel a little bit more conscious and thoughtful, and overall is going to help the entire feeling of the image. Okay, so point number 2 for this video is something I've been doing a lot recently, and it's similar to the 360 approach that I often take in photography. There's a video about that on my channel, so you can check it out after this one if you want to. But this one's more of a simpler, dumbed down version of the 360 approach, and it works really well when you're faced with a subject that's really interesting from one particular angle. So when you're face on with it, if the front of the subject is super interesting and you get that straight on shot of it like I have done here, what I try and do next is say, can I get a photo of the left and can I get a photo of the right where the front is still present? So in the case of this old workshop building here, I've gone to the left and I've got a photo from the left angle, but I'm still including the front of the building, which I feel has the most character. And then the same again, I've gone to the right of the building, this one, probably makes even more sense because we've got all those wooden windows and doors coming into play here. So great technique when you're out in the field taking photos. If you're looking at something and you feel that straight on is the most interesting angle, you can take your straight on shot and then say, but can I get a left angle and a right angle where the front of the building or the front of the subject that is most interesting is still very prominent, but we're just playing a bit with the angles, bringing some other subjects into play maybe as well, maybe getting a look of what's in the distance as well. On to point number 3 for this video, and this one is micro adjustments, and it's basically problem solving and making very minute movements while you're out with a composition in mind that can play a major role into how great the photo turns out. So I'll start off with a couple of good ones first and then we'll get into the bad ones. So this shot here of the ruined building that you may have seen recently in my video, I've gone in here for a nice tight crop, textured and lovely. We've got those green rocks down the bottom, but what I want you to focus on is the tree in the center of the building that comes up through the gap in the wall there. If I take a step too far left or too far right and my angle is off, that tree then comes behind the wall. I should say as well, I do think these are often the minor tweaks that only really other photographers notice, because if somebody that's never looked into photography before comes across an image, they're probably not really going to think about, oh, look how they've positioned that tree in between there, that's really nice. Unless somebody has got a really artistic brain, of course. But I think it's pretty black and white that having that tree centered in that gap there makes it a more pleasing frame. Okay, I'm gonna go on to a couple of bad examples here before we get back to the good ones, and I'll show you. It'll probably make more sense when I show you a bad example. So this shot here of the old derelict petrol station. Now originally I loved this photograph. Can you guess? Can you guess what it is? On the right hand side where it says stores, that billboard, whatever that is, cuts through the text. And that really bothers me as a photographer. Maybe I take framing and stuff like this way too far, you tell me in the comments, but that really bothers me because the text is such a major part of the photograph. And all I would have had to do to get that out the way of the text is either lift the camera a little bit higher or take a step to the left, which then would have pushed that billboard thingy-mabobby across to the side a bit. Okay, let's fly through a few more so I don't stay on this particular topic too long. I've got an A/B example here for you. So this shot here of me stood inside this very dark radar station. In this particular example, we've got 2 windows and I'm facing out towards the left. Now I took this one first and I took a look at it on the back of my camera. And I said, you know what, that window in the top right hand corner isn't really doing anything to the frame. It's kind of a bit too far off. And it's also not the window that's actually casting the light that I'm stood in. So the micro adjustment that I made in this case was to crop in with the camera, zoom in. I also decided to turn around and face in the other direction, straight up at the window. And now we have a very powerful scene of the one window that's casting the light. Also got that powerful shadow behind me, and I think that is way nicer and way better than the first one after making that small, minute micro adjustment. For number 4, we're talking about knowing while you're out taking photos what it is you're trying to portray. And this still comes under the umbrella of composition, I think, but it's more about stuff that's coming and going from your frame, what you want to include in it, perhaps even how you edit the photo. But the examples I've got here, I've got one where it's stuff coming and going from the frame, and one is another adjustment that I've made in the field to improve the feeling that I wanted to portray. So this shot here of the ISIS building again, we've got this kid running into the frame with his arms wild and he's clearly just having a great time, right? This image to me now, because of that kid being present, portrays a sense of like fun and maybe even a bit of speed moving through the frame and that sort of carefree attitude that kids have. Now that can very quickly shift if we go ahead and look at this version of the shot, which is a guy with his hood up in very dark clothing, walking through the frame a little bit more in the distance. And now to me, this photograph represents more a little bit of loneliness, ominous, which is very much more what I navigate towards when it comes to photography. And I remember standing here and saying to Jess, oh, I just need one person to come through. I just need one person that's powerful in dark clothing. I stood there for a little while and there was loads of people coming and going, and then finally I got this one, which, because that's the feeling I like to portray in a lot of my images, would end up probably being my favorite. We've also got a couple of versions where there's no one in the frame at all, and then when you haven't got somebody in the frame in this instance, I feel it leans towards more sort of abandoned, desolate, quiet, peaceful perhaps. Kind of reminds me of like a lockdown COVID photo or something like that. And then I've got one more A/B example for you here to finish out this video. Here is a building I took a photo of in Italy. I really like the orange blinds that are down on all the windows here. The first one that I took, I looked at and I said, I like that, but it's a little bit too close in. And what I want to portray right now in this moment is the feeling of that building and its surroundings and how it's nestled in there in the mountains. So all I had to do here, this would probably be a micro adjustment, was to step back a tiny bit and zoom out. We then get this version of the image that to me shows way more significance to that building being nestled in there in that valley with the mountains above it, a bit of the sky in there as well. And that one to me portrays what I wanted to portray in that moment way more than the other one does. So to conclude, if you stand somewhere with your camera and you know and you really think about what you want to portray right there and then, you can then pick up on these little changes that you can make, whether it be waiting for a particular person to come into your photo, whether it be making a minor adjustment or a cutoff point or something along those lines to help aid that feeling you want to portray. You're on the way then to making way more thoughtful photographs. So that's going to wrap up this video. I hope all those points made sense and I did a good job of explaining, because this one was completely off the dome. I normally make quite a few notes and stuff for my videos so I don't go too far off topic, but hopefully they made sense and hopefully they helped you and your photography. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.